On Monday, June 7th, 1937, at 11:38 a.m., Jean Harlow died in room 826 at the Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles, California. 4 days after the 21st anniversary of her daughter's death, Mama Jean would die on June 11th, 1958, of a heart attack. She was laid to rest in an unmarked tomb next to her daughter. She was quoted as saying, "My life began when her life began, and was completed when she went away." At only 26 years of age, Jean Harlow had taken Hollywood by storm, starring in over 20 films, including The Saturday Night Kid, Hell's Angels, The Public Enemy, Red-Headed Woman, and Dinner at 8. Jean Harlow was MGM Studios' magic. But what about her life prior to becoming Jean Harlow? The life of the towhead girl with green eyes that was born Harlean Harlow Carpenter. Harlean Harlow Carpenter was born in Kansas City, Missouri on March 3, 1911, at 7:40 p.m. Her parents were a dentist named Montclair Carpenter from Iowa and her mother, Jean Harlow, from Kansas City. Jean's father, Samuel Skip Harlow, made sure that she married Montclair and not the railroad conductor she was currently involved with. The family's plan after they were wed was to have a baby boy and name him Harlean Carpenter. When that didn't work out, their little girl would keep the name Harlean. Nicknamed the baby, Harlean's mother Jean is quoted as saying, "We were always together, the baby and I." If this was mutual or more of a relationship of an overbearing mother, Harlean would say years later about her mother, "Mother and I became more than mother and daughter. We grew up to be real friends. Perhaps it was because I was rather mature for my age, and Mother knew that I understood the unhappiness she was feeling." It has been said that Mama Jean wanted more out of life and made her daughter into a tiny version of herself. By 1922, Jean Carpenter's restlessness and boredom had taken its toll, and she divorced Montclair Carpenter and received full custody of Harlean. The 11-year-old baby was on a train with her mother headed to Los Angeles in hopes of a film career in Hollywood. A film career for herself, not her daughter. They found a rooming house at 1015 South Gramercy Place, and Harlean was enrolled at the Hollywood School for Girls at 1749 North La Brea Avenue, currently the Women's Club of Hollywood. Since Harlean's grandfather Skip was paying for her education, Mama Jean went for the best. As Mama Jean's hopes for stardom began to fade due to her age and the extreme competition with the younger girls, she began to take notice of her daughter's unique and powerful appeal, especially her gorgeous cotton white hair and green eyes. Each summer, Mama Jean and Harlean would return home to Kansas City. As Harlean grew up, her affluent real estate developer grandfather Skip became very unhappy about baby's appearance and her noticeable magnetism to boys at such a young age. Mama Jean was told to move back to Kansas City or be disinherited. It's important to note that Mama Jean refused to work and relied on $200 a month she received as alimony payments from her ex-husband and money from her father Skip. This led to financial troubles and the possibility of her being cut off. Back in Kansas City, Harlean attended school at Notre Dame de Sion and then Miss Bigelow's private school. While away at camp during the summer of 1926, Harlean contracted scarlet fever, which kept her in bed for 3 weeks. This inflammatory disease is known to affect the heart, joints, skin, and the nervous system, sometimes even creating long-term damage to a person's kidneys. Harlean's long recovery at the time never gave her doctor any concern about long-term damage to any of her vital organs. She was seen as a 15-year-old girl that was full of life and ready to write a new chapter in her life. Mama Jean was also ready for a new chapter in her life as well. A 43-year-old man named Marino Bello had swept her off her feet. He was married, abusive, and as Skip Harlow called him, an unsavory character. During this time, Harlean was studying at an all-girls school in Lake Forest called Ferry Hall. She didn't particularly enjoy school, even though her classmates liked her, and she received good grades. Harlean related more to adults and found most of the students there naive. At the end of 1926, Marino Bello's wife divorced him due to physical cruelty, and a month later he was married to Mama Jean. If this bothered Harlean, it wouldn't matter for long, because she would meet the man she would marry, Charles Fremont McGrew II. McGrew was a 20-year-old man that was the heir to a fortune. It was love at first sight for both. They were married on September 12, 1927. But by the time November rolled around, Chuck's excessive drinking, along with the then 16-year-old Harlean's drinking, the marriage wouldn't last longer than a couple of years. The couple would move from Kansas City to 618 North Linden Drive in Beverly Hills, California. Harlean described her marriage by saying, "We were more like 2 children playing housekeeping than a settled married couple. Since there was no necessity for Chuck to work, we had 24 hours in which to play. Our life was one continuous party." Chuck's drinking continued to get worse, and Mama Jean and the unemployed Marino Bello moved to Los Angeles to be closer to Harlean. This didn't alleviate Chuck's frustration with the marriage. On June 11, 1929, their marriage had ended. Harlean separated from Chuck not too long after she found out she was pregnant. There is talk that Harlean was forced by Mama Jean and Bello to get an abortion. Regardless, Harlean was heartbroken over the loss of the child, saying, "I wanted the child that was taken from me. My whole life would have been different if I'd been given that baby." Bello and Mama Jean moved into the home she once shared with her husband. We can only speculate that this was probably her mother's plan from the moment she moved back to Los Angeles. This was probably due to an unexpected event in 1928 that brought hope to Mama Jean's dreams of stardom for her daughter. While still married to Chuck, Harlean's friend Rosalie Roy needed a ride to an appointment she had at the Fox Studios. Being the good friend that she was, Harlean drove her. While she waited for Rosalie inside the studio, her friend came to her with 3 Fox executives that immediately asked the young Harlean if she had ever thought of trying to break into pictures. She had never felt any desire to act, and even after the men gave her letters of introduction to Fox and the Central Casting Bureau, she just stuffed the papers into her purse. For Harlean, this new opportunity seemed less than appealing. But for her mother, this was a second chance for the fame she wanted when the first two arrived in Los Angeles all those years ago. When she applied to Central Casting, she did it under her mother's maiden name, Jean Harlow. Her first job for Fox was in 1928 for the prison drama Honor Bound. The film's premise is about a woman that accidentally kills her abusive husband, and the young man, played by George O'Brien, that takes the blame and goes to prison. This image here shows Harlean sitting at a table as an extra for her second film, Moran of the Marines, starring Richard Dix. Harlean made her way to Hal Roach Studios, where she was an extra making $10 a day in the film Chasing Husbands, playing a bathing beauty. For the film Why Be Good with Colleen Moore, Harlean can be seen playing a blonde on a rooftop bench at Neil Hamilton's second party. It wasn't until December of that year that she would move up to bit parts in Hal Roach Studios' two-reelers, starring Laurel and Hardy in Liberty as the woman in the cab, billed as Harlean Carpenter. Hal Roach had this to say of Harlean. She was different. Her hair was an odd type, and she had a beautiful face and body. There was nobody like her. When Roach offered his new actress a 5-year contract, he said that her mother, Mama Jean, made all the decisions. Not that she was any good at business, but that she and her husband Bello were always around. The contract would give Harlean Carpenter $100 a week while making pictures for Hal Roach Studios. But when Roach shut down production to build indoor sound stages to transition his studio to sound, Harlean was back to being an extra, this time at Paramount. Harlean would play a chorus girl in the Buddy Rogers film Close Harmony. When asked what he remembered about the young Harlean, Buddy said, "Did I look at her and think she was going to be a big star? No, I didn't. I didn't look at the daughter. I looked at the mother. She was very, very attractive." The film is based on a warehouse clerk who has put together an unusual jazz band and the girl that uses her influence to get him a place on one of her theater's stage shows. The week of May 12, 1929, audiences saw the return of Harlean to Hal Roach Studios and Laurel and Hardy, this time with the screen credits of Jean Harlow. The film Double Whoopee casts Harlow as a swanky blonde hotel guest that steps from her taxi only to have the doorman accidentally slamming her dress into the car door. The rest is film history. Jean Harlow was 18 years old, divorced, and living with her mother and her mother's husband, the less than desirable Marino Bello. Her film roles would continue to grow, and eventually, Jean Harlow would fall into the employment of a 23-year-old Texan named Howard Hughes. As her fame continued, Harlean Harlow Carpenter would now just be a memory of Jean Harlow's past.